right, and I am glad to be back with you. I am so glad we're finally up and running. Hey, listen, thank y'all so much for hanging tight with me, making sure that you stick in there with me while I fight YouTube. It was not my internet. Apparently, it was something to do with YouTube itself. It was not like, I've got this love-hate relationship. I love technology, but it just never seems to want to love me back. It's a very abusive relationship. So, listen, y'all, thank you for hanging tight with me. My name is Jacob Waldrop, and I'm here with Waldrop in History. I'll be your host today, and with me I have a special guest star.
I'm Elizabeth.
And that is Elizabeth Waldrop, and she's here to help me out today, and I want to thank y'all all on this Pandemic Wednesday. It is April 8th, 2020. I'm actually saying the dates every day just to remind myself so I have some semblance of a track of time. I'll drop my recipe for French toast. I'm a pretty good French toast maker. So before we get going, I did want to go over a couple things real fast. First, the agenda. Today is Pandemic Wednesday, so I'm going to cover a different pandemic every Wednesday, at least for a while.
It's a Woozy Wednesday.
Earlier this week, if you want to go back and watch it, if you're watching and you have not seen it, we went over Bill Clinton on Monday. We went over George W. Bush on Tuesday. Tomorrow we're going to cover 9/11. And then Friday we're covering the 90s. Which brings me to my other request, and that is baby pictures. Send in those baby pics. Some of y'all are doing that. Look, I'm telling you, I'm really enjoying seeing some of y'all send in those baby pictures. They're very adorable. And we're going to load them up on Wednesday, and we're going to do a little guessing game to see if you can figure out who people are from their baby pictures.
Mine and my brothers are going to be in there too.
Don't spoil that. Okay, so...
But they're going to know.
They wouldn't. They know now because you told them. Anyways.
They know it's going to be one of them.
So send in those baby pictures. Send in my email address. I know I put the thing in Google Classroom. I'm not going to spoil who I have and have not gotten some, but I've gotten some really good ones. I'm going to put those up. Make sure you send them to my email, not in Google Classroom, because there's been a lot of issues me getting them out of Google Classroom. So send those in. All right. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and start the lesson. You'll notice I'm dressed in my pandemic outfit here, the all red. You like that? Kind of adds the ambiance to it. Red, pandemics, death, mortality. I don't know. Anyways, so your code today.
I think more green because of sickness. I think more green.
Your code today is going to be CVIBS. Okay, and it seems like some of y'all are already in there. Good for y'all. And today we're going to talk about the Spanish flu. We're going to talk about, yes, thank you. We're going to talk about the Spanish flu and why it is called the Spanish flu. But first, before we get going, I have to explain to you that it is not a Spanish flu. We're going to talk about why it gets that name. But there's a lot of conjecture about where it first starts.
It originated in Kansas?
Yeah, so the first theory we're going to go through is that it originated in the United Kingdom. Of course, we didn't have Twitter and YouTube and the CDC back then, so there's no way to know for sure. But it's believed it started in the United Kingdom. There was a camp in Etaples in France.
This is in the United States.
A major UK troop was staging a hospital camp in Etaples, France. Was the first site of the potential outbreak. They think, and then the next case, based on its pathology, they believe that it goes all the way back to China. But again, the source doesn't really match, like as far as like how it broke out, the symptoms,
So it's really the Kansas Chinese?
But as far as we know, for sure, the first documented case is in Kansas. So none of those sources are in Spain, by the way. So how does it spread? Well, it spreads by an infectious sneeze or cough. And it should be of note that a single sneeze can spread more than 500,000 samples of the virus.
Achoo.
Yes, achoo.
Achoo.
Okay, so how does COVID-19 spread? Because, we're kind of talking about these pandemics to compare it to
Wait. Is it COVID
today.
or is it COVID?
I'm sorry, COVID-19. How does COVID-19 spread?
I thought it was COVID for a second.
How does COVID-19 spread? Do you know, Elizabeth? How does it spread?
Coughs and sneezes.
Well, not just that, right? It's airborne.
It's airborne.
Yeah, so just breathe.
Because the cough and sneezes.
Yeah, coughing and sneezing will make it worse, but here's the other thing, too. just you breathing can spread the virus. And then when you breathe out onto something, you put the virus on that, and then you touch your face and you breathe it in. So
it's like this, okay? So someone has the virus, and they cough and they sneeze into their hand thinking they're covering it, and then they touch a surface, okay?
Right.
And then somebody else comes that doesn't have the virus and touches that exact same surface. Then they touch their face, and then they have coronavirus.
Right. So it can be something as simple like one of the things I've seen a lot of people do. Like I saw people outside playing volleyball. And you were like, oh, that's keeping social distancing. Except you're sweaty, you're breathing on your hands, whether you mean to or not. You're touching your face, and then you touch the volleyball. And next thing you know, you're serving up Corona. So
you're not playing volleyball. You're playing.
You got mucus droplets, airborne, person airborne, right? What's up, Joe?
Today the baby pics?
No, we're gonna do it on Friday.
Okay.
Yeah, Friday's baby pictures. So it is spread airborne, and that is so important to know exactly how the virus is spread. That's step one to stopping the virus, is knowing how to spread. While we're waiting on these answers, let me go ahead and give some shout outs. Thank you, Norali, for showing up. Thank you, Quinn, Noel, Trinity, Aaliyah, Behavius, and Bushrin. I'm going to say this every episode. Behavius, I'm still waiting on that theme song. Got to get some motivation. I know you bored sitting at the house. So, alright. So, let's move on. Now, this strain of the flu was an early strain of H1N1. You may be saying, where have I heard this for? Well, it's because we had an epidemic of it in 2009. This time we called it the swine flu.
Wait, hydrogen one?
No, it's not. It's not based on that. It's based on Latin words. I could look it up actually. Anyway, a virus is typically most deadly when it jumps species. So that's why it was so deadly in 2009. It jumped from pigs into humans. So I put up this real fast for you to match up how the different viruses have spread. Let me look up what H1.
I'm already doing it. H1N1. The designation H1N1 indicates unique traits which exhibit characteristics that identify the virus to the immune system.
Okay.
And allows for
hold on, let's see.
Ooh, the H stands for I don't know how to say that word.
What
the
is
N
the word?
stands for I don't know how to say that word either.
Where is it? Point out. It stands for
hemaglutinin. Hemaglutinin.
And the N stands for neuromyositis. Neuromyositis.
Hemagglutinin neuroamidase.
Yes, that's the one.
Yeah, that what she just said.
All right, looks like they're getting them. Except Noel. Noel, where you at, buddy?
That are found in the outer shell or envelope of the virus. It's also known as a swine flu. It's called swine flu because in the past, people who got it had direct contact with pigs. That changed several years ago with the virus.
Well, I can tell you this right now, Miss Jackson. I did not dye my hair during the pandemic.
You had it in your pandemic.
I did cut my hair, though. It's a little shorter. But did not dye it. I got the Mrs. to cut it for me.
I want to dye my hair.
Yeah, that's not happening. Okay, so how did it spread, right? So one of these things that you're going to see during these pandemics is this is going to be one kind of like COVID-19 where it's like a perfect storm of crap happens. So the first thing that causes it to spread is trench warfare, right? You're going to see this in the trenches. You got everybody crammed together. Oh, wow, dark blue. That's cool. Everybody is crammed together. Oh, here. Go ahead, Norali. My bad. Everybody is crammed together in these close, tight proximities. They're fighting side by side. They're sleeping together. They're sleeping in the mud. They're not practicing proper hygiene.
What is
that's where they're matching slides. You can do it if you want. If you want to join in.
What?
Slides. Yeah.
What do you mean I'm matching slides?
You'll see. You'd have to be logged in.
Wait.
To see. Well, I think you're a little late for this one. But anyway, they're in the trenches. They're side by side, close quarters. You know, being able to remove waste and stuff like that from the front lines is really difficult. Very unsanitary conditions. So the next thing that's going to happen is the people in the trenches are very malnourished. Remember, at the very beginning, they're eating kind of decently, and then as the war continues on, they're eating really, really low quality food. They're also dealing with chemical attacks and just stress. You know, one of the worst things that can hurt your immune system is stress. So they're easily susceptible, plus they have all the perfect conditions. So the question I asked was, going back to World War I know it sounds like, man, what is Mr. Waldrop's obsession with talking about life in the trench? That is because, I'll be honest, I'm a little bit obsessed with it. Just the mental fortitude for them getting through it. So I asked you the question, what was it like in the trench that made it so easy for this virus to spread? What you think, Elizabeth?
People are so close together.
Yeah, people are close together. What else? What are some other things? How do you think they got rid of their waste? How do you think they got rid of their
I
waste?
had to type in something because it was going to make me upset. I don't know, nor do I want to know.
No, not right now. Not right now. This is not the time.
Okay.
People too close together, poison gas, dirty water. That's another one. Remember, they had a hard time burying the dead. You know, just because your body dies, the virus does not mean it's not still able to contaminate people. You know, so a lot of times they're burying people right where they're walking around. Dead bodies everywhere. That's right. No nutritious food. Very good answers. Horrible sanitation. No hygiene. Close together. Weather, water supplies. Yeah, that's another one too. You know, a lot of times they're sharing water. You know, you're coughing and sneezing and drinking out of a canteen. Then you hand it to your next buddy and you serving them up a nice glass of Spanish flu. So that's right. Okay, I'm going to move on. Yeah, so close, people dying there, stink, no breathing, etc. That's right.
No
Let's
bathing.
see. Oh, bathing, sorry.
So
Yeah, very unsanitary environment. Now, how else does it spread? Now, the next way in which it spreads is increased transportation. We now have cars. Okay, they're not mass-produced, but they exist. So it also makes it more international travel is now possible. You know, we're fighting in a world war, so obviously you're sending people all around the world. And then even domestically, like when it comes back into the ports, people are getting in cars and they're driving all over the country and spreading it all over the country. So that's making it spread a little faster. Then probably comes the most nefarious part of all of it, and I kind of liken this back to Chernobyl. You know, in that Chernobyl quote of what is the cost of lies? It's not that we'll mistake them for the truth. The real danger is that if we hear enough lies, we'll no longer recognize the truth at all. It is so dangerous for our government to lie to us. And this is going to be an answer, a situation where nations are at war. They're not sharing information. So when the pandemic breaks out, you know, we talked about it might have broken out in the United Kingdom. They're not sharing information, even with us. Right? Everybody's playing their cards close to the chest. Allies are even keeping information close to the chest. And then another one is governments didn't inform the populations because they didn't want herd enlistment. Right? You know, you didn't want to have a situation where you're telling everybody, hey, if you go to the front lines, you're going to get the Spanish flu and die. So they're just not telling the population, so it won't hurt enlistment. So what factors created a perfect storm for COVID? Why do I keep saying COVID? COVID-19 to
I've
spread
heard
here.
people say COVID before.
Yes, that's
why
me.
I
I'm messing up. So what is the perfect storm of things that have allowed COVID-19 to spread? What are some factors you think?
People not knowing how to sanitize properly.
Okay, so you got people not washing their hands. But what are some other factors? Well, here's some things I can think of.
Spring break.
All right, you got people not. We've had kind of a war on science for a while now, so people are not trusting the experts. People are not staying inside. I think one of the major factors you have here in the South is, God, the weather's beautiful. We only get like, 2-3 weeks of beautiful weather out of the year? We're living it right now. Everybody wants to go outside. You got countries not sharing information. China didn't share all their information in the beginning. You had our government calling it a hoax, so that wasn't helpful. You had, I think another one too is the fact that you could carry the disease for days at a time and not know it. People partying up Mardi Gras, that was a huge factor in Louisiana. People going outside, hanging with others, lack of a response. We weren't prepared. We didn't have enough masks. We didn't have enough ventilators. It's one of those, y'all are sitting there naming stuff and it's like, yep. All the above. Everything y'all name. People are traveling a lot. Like, think about it this way. If this disease had happened 100 years ago, it never makes it over here. We would just like, all right, we're not allowing travel from China. It's not happening. Teenagers thinking they're immune, but nobody's immune.
China found the treatment already?
They found better treatments than we have.
Then why don't they just come over here and bring this over?
Yeah, Noelle put a good point too. We may have a second wave. We don't know. Yeah, lack of information. Well, Ms. Jackson, let me tell you, and I always answer these questions at the end, but they're saying April 30th. That's what the school's saying. That's what the state is saying. However, that Dr. Funi, however you say his name is, the guy that's in charge of this thing, he's saying it might be bleeding into next school year. So, we don't know.
I'm going to be in 8th grade.
Noelle, it's funny you mentioned that U.S. is still number one. We're not only number one in coronavirus cases,
we're higher.
We have twice as many as any other country on the planet. Right? We're over 215,000. In Italy is a little over 100,000, so we have twice as many.
Y'all want to know why? Because people won't stay inside.
Yeah, and it's still increasing. We had I think 2,500 yesterday. Another 1,000 added the day before that. So it seems like we're in this pattern where everybody goes out during the weekend, and then Monday and Tuesday it grows, and then Thursday and Friday it just explodes. And then it starts to die down around Friday and Saturday, and then Sunday rolls around, and everybody goes back to church like they're not supposed to, and then they just spread the infection all over again. So, yeah, not enough people washing their hands. That's a huge one.
Easy for it to spread.
Now, in the United States, the first sighting is going to be in Kansas, in a place called Haskell County. This is going to be in 1918. By a guy named Dr. Loring Miner. He diagnosed a cook at a Fort Riley military facility used to train troops for the war. So the first case is going to be a case where people are in a military facility getting ready to go off to the war, right? So obviously they're going to spread it over in Europe, right? Now, Miner tries to warn the U.S. Public Health Service academic journal, but it's ignored. And again, why is it ignored? Because they don't want to hurt enlistment. They don't want people knowing about it and not enlisting in the war. So, why do you think his warnings are ignored? Well, a combination of things. The big one being, they don't want hurt enlistment, right? I mean, you're fighting a world war. The last thing you need is people not volunteering for military service. There's also the aspect they don't want to panic on their hands. So it's kind of a perfect storm of lack of information mixed with a lack of desire to spread good information. Yeah, and a lot of people thought it was just the normal flu. They didn't realize just how bad it was. Well, one of the things is, and we'll talk about it later, is this is a weird flu where as you start getting sick, you start turning blue. And we're going to talk about why that is before. And, yeah, so it's like this really weird flu where like your whole body starts turning blue. See if I can show up a picture. Let's see. Oh, yeah, I guess you wouldn't have colored pictures back then. Here's a painting. Oops. Yeah, here's a painting to show you. Let's see. Yeah, so this is what somebody looks like. You notice the artist tried to kind of paint them turning blue. But that's what was going on. Like, everybody was getting affected with this thing. It's starting to turn blue. So, yeah, people didn't want people to know. Didn't want to hurt enlistment. That's right. All of that is right. Froot Loops. Yeah. Yeah, I think my wife loves eating Froot Loops without milk for some reason. Okay, so within days, 522 men at the camp had reported being sick. So now you've got just like rows and rows of what looks like Smurf people. By 11th of March in 1988, the virus had spread all the way to Queens, New York.
Can you live if you're blue?
You don't live long, not with this virus. Failure to take preventive measures in March and April was later criticized. And that is disgusting, Froot Loops and orange juice. I would never drink that.
That is disgusting. But,
love you, Noel, but I couldn't do it, buddy.
No, but my science teacher...
No, it's not happening.
No, science teacher, one day...
Yeah, Trini said if people were walking around like Smurfs, she'd panic too. Okay, so as troops were sent to Europe, the flu came with them. It would then be discovered to be an even stronger strain, so it's going to mutate in a place called Brest, France, and then in Freetown, Sierra Leone. So it not only is deadly, then it mutates to get even deadlier once it gets to Europe.
My science teacher came in with the slide one day for like traits that were like passed down, and
hold on, wait till there's a question. You'll say this. All right. So when the virus moved to Spain, it gains a lot of coverage, and this is why it's called the Spanish flu. Because I know up till now you're like, why is it called the Spanish flu? It didn't start in France. Spain. It didn't start in Spain. They didn't have the first documented case in Spain. Why the Spanish flu? And here's why. Spain had exceptionally good job of having a free press. So Spain decided once their press got a hold of the information, once the virus spread there, they started getting the news out to the people. Like, good newspapers are supposed to do. And so as the virus starts getting reported on by Spanish reporters, everybody in the world said, oh, look, it happened there first. There it is. There's where it started. Because nobody wanted to accept responsibility for it, particularly not America, of saying, no, we're the ones that brought it to the war. There's also the fact that Spain didn't really get involved in the war, so they kind of became like the low-hanging fruit of countries to blame it on. So, it was like this horrible combination of France was doing the right thing reporting this information, mixed with the same fact that they were looking for a scapegoat, and France was an easy country to pin it on because they're nobody's allies, right? So, Spain, sorry. So, basically in a nutshell, the reason Spain, and it's called the Spanish flu, the reason it's called the Spanish flu is because they're just the first ones to allow their newspapers to report on it. Okay? So here's the question. How is this similar to how some call COVID-19 the Asian virus? How is that similar? Because, there's a lot of people who call it the Asian virus. What do you think, Elizabeth?
It's blamed on Asia.
Hmm?
Asia is blamed for it.
Right. Well, I'll tell you this. At least when people are calling it the Asian virus, the first recorded cases came out of Asia. But you got to understand, there's a huge amount of people that want to shift the blame for how our country didn't provide proper information, right? So did the virus start in Asia? Sure it did. But at the same time, or China rather, just how China botched it in the beginning, you've had a lot of Asian countries that did fantastically. All right, like South Korea, they did a great job with it. Taiwan did a great job with it. They're already getting back to life as normal. So I think there's a huge amount of people wanting to scapegoat. Yes, the media is trying to use Asia as a scapegoat. Right. So that makes it very easy, right, to shift blame, right? Did China, were they the first to record the virus? Yes, they were. Did it spread out of the Wuhan province? Yes, it did. Does that have anything to do with why America has twice as many coronavirus cases? No. No, that's not the case. So, yeah, well, it did start in Asia, right? So, at least unlike the Spanish flu, it did actually start in Asia. But there's a huge amount of scapegoating involved. One of the things also, too, is it's been particularly frustrating is, my wife, who is Asian, right? She's from Indonesia. It's an Asian country. She's never set foot in Latin America. But if you look at Indonesians, it's easy to mistake them for Hispanic, right? So, she was kind of facing a lot of bigotry, anti-Hispanic bigotry, even though she isn't even Hispanic, never set foot in the Latin world. And now it's kind of funny in a tragically ironic way that now there's a lot of hate crimes against Asians because it's being called the Asian flu. Now she's like, man, just when all the bigotry towards Hispanics is starting to die off, now I get to have actual bigotry against the race I actually am a part of in Asians. So, yeah, it's messed up. And I tell you, the media, people in general, love a good scapegoat. They love a good scapegoat.
Wait, let me tell you what I was going to tell you earlier.
And welcome aboard, Mr. Velasco. I noticed you joined in. Thank you for joining us.
Before you change the next slide, my science teacher, Mr. June, she
shout out to who? What was his science teacher's name?
Miss Lejeune.
Miss Hayes?
Ashley Lejeune.
Lejeune. Okay, shout out to Miss Lejeune. Miss Lejeune.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. What are you gonna say?
But she had a slide on one of her slideshows because she was doing a PowerPoint on passed down traits from person to person over time, and they were this entire family was actually blue. Blue, the color of Nearpod title, blue.
Wow.
Blue. And so we had to figure out if it was I don't know.
Okay, so it's hard to know the exact number because again, people aren't exactly being forthcoming with information, but it's estimated to have killed between 50 and 100 million people. That is somewhere between 3 and 5% of the entire population of the planet. Okay? Now, to put that in reference, it's more than the 20 million that are killed in combat from World War I. So it's somewhere between twice as deadly as World War I or twice as deadly as both World Wars combined. Okay? So we're talking piles and piles of dead. Of course, you can see these factories where they're just piling up the dead. Okay, so what lesson can be learned from the volume of people that were killed? What lesson can you learn from that? What do you think, Elizabeth?
Am I the only one that heard that?
It's the baby's construction. Stop with it. What lesson do you think can be learned from this? From how many people died in this pandemic?
To not blame it on other countries?
Well, that's part of it. I think for me, the personal lesson is, Mother Nature's, it's even more destructive than mankind is. Whenever we think about World War I and we think about the dead, the first thing that goes to is, trench warfare. But, to realize it's somewhere between twice as deadly or 5 times as deadly as trench warfare. And it also, to me, the lesson it learns is how important it is to have good information. for information to get out. We could have stopped a lot of death from happening had we shared information and had we trusted the scientists. Yeah, never underestimate possible threats. We should take it seriously. Well, and I tell you, this is one thing I probably should have put in the George W. Bush PowerPoint, but, all the way back in 2005, he started spending a ton of money on dealing with pandemics. And even I at the time was like, man, why is it all of a sudden he obsessed with pandemics? And looking back at it, it's like, man, that was a good call. He kind of makes the point of like, look, we're never going to know when the next bad bubonic plague comes along. That's why it's so important to, prepare for disease. Almost 5 times in human history, we've had a major, major, major pandemic. Some of them that, almost wiped out the world, so to speak. So, it's really, really, don't ever underestimate Mother Nature. I love this answer. It's better to be prepared for any and everything and take things seriously before they get out of control. It's one of those things that seems kind of silly now, but one of the things I've been saying for years is, I think we need to have a plan for what happens if an asteroid hits us. And I know that you're like, what? That's crazy. But hey, go ask the dinosaurs if they had wished they had had a plan for an asteroid. So, I mean, it's not if, it's when. Eventually, you can go look at the moon. That big giant crater on the moon? That's where an asteroid hit it. So we're going to eventually get hit by an asteroid. It's not if, it's when.
That's how our moon was created.
Yeah. Well, our supervolcano. We could have a supervolcano. Yosemite is a supervolcano. We got to have a plan for that. So, that's right. Alright, so I want you to kind of see this. And now, I don't have a lot of videos in here, just to be brutally honest. There was no video footage of 1918. So there's a lot of just me talking. I've got one video at the end. But I did want to bring up this visual. It's kind of fascinating. This is the virus death count by size, to kind of put it in perspective. So here's bubonic plague, about 200 million. Smallpox is going to kill about 56 million. Now, they do a really conservative estimate to say 40 to 50 million for the Spanish flu. That's a really, really conservative estimate. That's just confirmed deaths. We think about the big plague of our lifetime. Of course, this is the one we talked about, the Justinian flu. But the big plague we talked about of our lifetime was really the AIDS epidemic, right? And this thing killed more in about 14 days than AIDS did in 24 years. I think it was like in 24 weeks. The Spanish flu killed more in 24 weeks than AIDS did in 24 years. Now, one of the things that made this so deadly is most viruses will weaken during the summer, but not the Spanish flu. It didn't seem to mess with it at all. And the fear we may have is, what if corona does not weaken in the summer? So that may be something we have to deal with. It usually break down those protective proteins around the virus, the radiation, stuff like that. So let me ask you, what do you think will happen if COVID-19 doesn't go away when it turns warm? What happens? Then what?
It's gonna get roasted.
Well, we hope.
It'll be like sitting on a fire.
We hope it's gonna go away in the summer. Obviously this thing hasn't gone through there or something.
It goes up to like 102 here.
Okay, but what if that doesn't kill the virus? Then what?
Then blast it with snow.
Well, we know cold doesn't help. What if summer doesn't help? Yeah, national lockdown. Well, and I'll tell you, somebody was mentioning this the other day, and it's something that's like, for those that don't know this, man, I love to swim. I grew up in the water. Okay, when I was a kid, I was like a fish, right? Like, it's one of the reasons I actually got so sunburned when I was a kid. But, I mean, I don't think a summer goes by when I don't hit up the beach. I love hitting up the beach. It is literally one of my favorite activities. And somebody asked me, like, what if we go the whole summer and I don't get to swim? I was like, man, what a heartbreaking thing. Of course, obviously, you don't want to swim in the same pool if somebody's got corona. Well, I'll tell you this. We think it's immune to warm temperatures. We don't know, right? Obviously, Iran is pretty warm, and they're piling up the dead over there. So it certainly looks like it may be the case. Yeah, we might have to shut down. Elizabeth says move to Mars.
Wait. No, go back down to my answer. Go back to the answer. We will move to
Well,
Mars.
unfortunately, we're about 10 to 20 years away from going to Mars.
I'm going to be the first woman there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's see. Anybody else gonna put an
You
answer?
know, if you were to go to Mars, you'd be the first teacher that's ever actually been into outer space before.
Man, I tell you what, I hope you're wrong, Trinity. You might be right, but I hope you're wrong. I can't sit in this thing forever. I'm gonna lose my freaking mind. I've been going out and running every morning, running 2 miles around my neighborhood. And even then, like when I see people walking their dogs or something, it's like part of me wants to run the other way. So, man, I don't know if any of y'all had this, and I'm gonna go ahead and change the slide, but I'm starting to dream about being in quarantine. I had, for the 3rd time last night, I had a dream, and in the dream, I'm just stuck at the house, bored. Like, that's in my dream. Is now I'm having dreams where I'm stuck in the house on lockdown. It's like, man, what a miserable dream. You know, it's not a nightmare. It's not a good dream. It's just boring. It's a boring dream. So.
Oh my gosh, even your dreams are boring.
Yeah. So the virus seemed to be the most contagious to those that are 20 to 40 years of age. 90% of those that were killed, 92% of those that killed, were under 65. So one of the things that we're dealing with the coronavirus is it seems to be really bad for those of people that are over 65. So why is it so deadly for the young? Well, here's why. The virus seems to be particularly deadly because it triggers something called, and I might need Rachel for this, cytokine. Cytokine? Is that how you say it? Rachel?
Yes.
How do you say this? Cytokine? Cytokine? Anyway, it triggers something known as a cytokine storm, and that is when your body has an cytokine is when your body has an overreaction to the body's immune system. So it's like your immune system kicks into overdrive, right? And if you've got a young, healthy immune system, it's even worse, right? So this ravages people that have a stronger immune system of that of young adults. So it's like extra deadly to young people. Okay? So how do you think COVID-19 being so dangerous to the elderly impacts how we look at it? How do you think?
All the young people are like, oh, it can't affect me.
Yeah.
But then you look at Dr. Chetta, who's actually on the news, you guys.
Yeah.
But, shout out to him. He was saying that, like, most of the people that are actually in the hospital are from 20 to, like, 35, I think you said? Or, like, 24 to 39?
I don't know the exact amount,
But they were like in their 20s to 30s. So actually, the people that are going out and are being like, oh, well, it can't affect me. I'm too
That's
young
right.
for
They're
it
living
to
that YOLO
affect
life.
me. Like, live long and prosper. Like, no. Okay?
Yeah,
no.
it makes the young think they're invincible. Well, and here's the other one, too, is, and this is what's really scary to me, is you're starting to hear people say, well, it only affects older people. Let's just reopen the country, and if the old people die, they die. And it's like, oh my goodness.
That annoys me, because, like, you're going to be young one day, and you're going to want your kids to not young. You're going to be old one day, and you're going to want your kids or your grandkids to take care of you. How would you feel if your kids or your grandkids were just like, you know what, they're old, let them just die?
Well, and here's the other thing, too, we don't want to
what?
happen. And, you know, we're talking about this, about how it got deadlier when it mutated. What we don't want this to happen is, we don't want Corona to hang around and mutate again. Because remember, you know, Corona is basically a strain of the COVID-19 is a strain of a virus that we've already had. Like, we already had to deal with MERS, however you say it. MERS. We already had to deal with that once, and we actually kicked its butt. So this is actually a deadlier strain of MERS.
Yes.
Yeah, it makes the young act like idiots. That's right.
Exactly. Young, conceited idiots.
That's right. Well, it is the case, right? So for this one, it's because the elderly have a weakened immune system.
But if they had a weakened immune system, they won't want someone to do
Okay,
that
so
to them.
the next kind of perfect storm of crappiness that makes the death count go so high is we're starting to have aspirin. Okay, remember I told you about how we thought that's what killed.
I was watching the news.
Hold on, let me talk. No. Hush. So one of the things that we're talking about is, if you remember back to the story of Rasputin, one of the things that they thought made the prince so ill was he was being prescribed aspirin. And a lot of people are just allergic to aspirin. But aspirin is new, and a lot of people are treating it like it's like the wonder cure for everything, right? So the Surgeon General in the U.S. Of the U.S. Army and the Journal of American Medical Association both recommend huge doses of 8 to 31 grams of aspirin per day is part of the treatment. However, if you take too much aspirin, it causes hyperventilation in 33% of the patients, as well as lung edema in 3% of the patients. So basically, in a nutshell, not only are people having weakened immune systems from this thing, but the overprescription of aspirin is causing additional symptoms to pile on. Hyperventilation, lungs filling up with fluid, stuff like that. So a lot of people are being killed not just from the disease, but from the treatment of the disease.
So it causes you to hyperventilate and...
Okay, hold on. It gets even worse. So Bayer had a patent on aspirin. They were the only ones that could make it. But around this time, their patent expires. So about this time is when everybody jumps into making aspirin game, right? All these other companies start pumping out aspirin, right? So it creates a perfect storm of right at the same time where people don't need to be taking aspirin, not to that degree. Every single company, all the pharmaceutical companies, are all making aspirin at the same time. So availability becomes massively increased.
I was watching the news the other day, and they were, like, one of the women on the news from, like, the hospital, they said, like, we ran out of Tylenol today.
Yeah.
Like, something as simple as Tylenol.
So why is it so important to practice good medicine, right? Not just medicine, good science-based medicine. Why is that so important?
I don't know, I won't answer this.
One of the things I think about is, there was, I can't remember the name of it, there was some drug that the government is now pushing. Well, let me try to be politically correct, that the president is now pushing. And, there's a lot of research that needs to go on to, if it helps people. But one of the things that they're talking about is, well, if you push out a bad drug that doesn't help the virus, you may have a problem with people getting sick of this drug, like it may have bad health conditions. Yeah. And then on top of that, people that need the drug can't get it because it's being bought up by everybody that has corona.
Yeah, and also, if you take a medicine that you don't need, you're going to get sick from that medicine.
Right, it can make it even worse.
And it can make, it can drop your immune system to whatever, COVID-19. Say you're taking aspirin that you don't need to be taking every single day. That's going to drop your immune system. And when it drops your immune system, then you'll be even more susceptible to COVID-19. So they're feeding you medicine that you don't need to take, and then you're getting health issues from that medicine. And then if you also get COVID-19, then it's even worse for you.
Yeah.
Because you have COVID-19 and you also have all the symptoms of the other medicine because you kept taking that medicine that you don't need to be taking.
Right.
People be aggravating.
Okay.
And everybody else.
So how did it end? Okay, so we don't know for sure, right? We're not entirely sure. The first theory is better treatment, better awareness. You saw that cartoon that started the slide.
Why does that animation have to be so cute, though?
Well, it's talking. Hold on, let me get to this. Better treatment and better awareness. The second one is enough people got infected that eventually there were so many people walking around immune to the virus that it just couldn't spread anymore. And the third one is the belief that it's possible the virus just became less deadly. Here's where we have to be careful. This virus didn't go anywhere. It still exists. H1N1 is still a problem. It still exists.
And we don't know if you get it.
Right,
once,
hold on.
we don't know if it's
hold on. So here's the problem. Right now, antibiotics seems to treat it. What if it mutates so that antibiotics can't treat it? Then what? So we may end up with another case of this on our hands, which is why it's so important that we have things like vaccines.
The worst part is...
So here's my question to you. How do you think this pandemic ends? How do you think COVID-19, how do you think it comes to an end? How do we get rid of corona?
I'm telling you, it's the end of society.
Well, it's eventually we're going to recover.
No.
It's going to be, we're going to be in rough shape, but I think eventually we will recover. How? How do we do it? What do you think?
I know what it's not by. It is not by going out and getting it so that you can be immune to it, okay? We do not know if you are going, we do not know if you get it, if you are going to be immune to it if you get it again. That made no sense. I don't even know if y'all can understand that. But, if you get it once, we don't know that it's like the chicken pox and you can't get it again. So,
yeah, and I want to show you something. So it
is not by going out and getting the coronavirus that hopefully you don't get it again.
This may be a solution. I'm going to show it to you right now. Coming out of Pittsburgh, they think they have found a vaccine for it. And you look at it, and this tiny little patch has a whole bunch of little sugar needles on it. And these sugar needles will dissolve into your skin. And it doesn't allow it to get very deep into your body. And it's got thousands of tiny little pieces of the coronavirus, so that your body can easily build up an immunity to it and easily have the antibodies to it. And this may be the vaccine that works, and this is coming out of Pittsburgh. Now, we're still about 12 to 18 months away from having it and having it tested and then having it mass-produced, but, it does look like we have a vaccine eventually coming. Enough people get it and it stops the spread. Heat, that's what we're hoping.
Hold up.
The whole country could lock down for a month. And we might have another depression. Better treatment. Let's see. Yeah, it's a lot of those anybody's guess. Miss Jackson says she washes her hands so much her skins are peeling. Yeah, I've been really blessed that I don't typically have a problem with dry hands. Like, you notice I don't have lotion in my room. I just don't have that issue. I'm starting to deal with, you can see it, flaky, dry hands just from washing my hands so much.
Go down to my answer.
Okay. Martial lockdowns, martial law, and everyone stays inside. Yeah, it might be the case.
I don't care, but we go on lockdown.
Now, why was it forgotten?
Inside.
Okay, so obviously y'all learned about the bubonic plague, but nobody learns about disease, right? It wasn't even on my standards to teach during World War I. Right? If you remember, when we went through World War I didn't even mention this, right? So here's why it's forgotten. The first one is, a lot of people say it helped win the war, right? Remember I talked about how both sides were on the brink of giving up? This is a big reason why both sides were on the brink of giving up. So that when the U.S. joined the war, it was like, all right, we give up. We're done. There were also a lot of other diseases that were really bad at the time. There was a bad cholera outbreak, yellow fever, etc. And I'll tell you, probably the biggest reason is death from war is way more sensational. Right? It's a lot easier to make a big news story about people dying in war. It's got a lot more drama to it. They're not going to make a movie about somebody laying down in bed and slowly dying, choking to death. It's a lot easier to make a movie like, when they made 1918, or 1917, sorry, the movie, which was a great movie, by the way. The first thing I knew when going into it, even when they announced the movie, they're making a 1917 movie, it was going to show people running around doing trench warfare. It wasn't going to show a bunch of blue people coughing up their lungs on a gurney. Right? Even though that was actually worse than the war itself. So my question to you is, what lesson did you take away from today's lesson? What did you take away from it? What do you think, Elizabeth?
Only Jesus can help us now.
Well, no. What lessons did you take away? Be serious.
People will entirely forget about diseases. When in fact the only reason why we go to school and we learn about history is so we do not repeat history.
I love that. Yeah, it's that old adage of if you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it. For me, I think the biggest lesson I learned from it is trust science. Right? That's the key to me. Is and I love this answer too. He says never underestimate Mother Nature. Right? Prepare for pandemics, right? Look, a lot of people said as bad as Corona has been, this is a trial run for the next bubonic plague. It's going to happen, y'all. I mean, it may not happen in your lifetime, but eventually, in a long enough period of time, we're going to have the next major pandemic. It's going to happen, where 50 to 100 million people are at risk.
The only people that can help you is yourself. Stay inside. If you go outside, stay 6 to 10 feet away from people.
Right.
Social distancing. Wash your hands.
And I'll tell you another one too. It learned is, as much as I love how globally connected we are, it does come with a price. One of the things you'll always hear me talk about is I am always pro-immigrant, right? Love immigrants, right? Love them, right? I think they add to my life. They add to society. When I'm around somebody that's from a different background, different culture, I look at it the same way. I use this analogy of like if you're growing up and you've never seen the color blue, right? You see paintings, you watch TV, you go your whole life and you've never seen the color blue. And then somebody shows you the color blue. There's really two ways to do it, right? There's two ways to look at it. You'll see a lot of people go, oh, I don't like that. That's different. And the other way is to say, oh, I love blue. What an awesome new color I get to enjoy. I want to see as much of it as I can. And that's kind of how I'm with a culture, right? Like, I didn't know really much anything about Indonesian culture until I married my wife. And now I love Indonesian culture because when I got to enjoy that, my reaction was to embrace it, right? And so, it's kind of that...
listen to the government.
That situation. As much as I love it, one of the things I would always say is, one of the reasons I want it to be very easy to come here, right? Not open borders, but easy, right? Like if you look at it, my ancestors paid, almost nothing to get here. It's just transportation, okay? But one of the reasons why I do actually want us to protect our borders and make sure we don't have illegal aliens is because of pandemics, right? Like, if we had a reasonable, rational path to citizenship where people didn't want to come here illegally, right? I don't know a whole lot of illegal immigrants that wouldn't pay $200 for a background health inspection to be legal, right? I don't know any, to be honest. I think that would be exceptional because one of the major reasons we have illegal immigration, and I can tell you this from firsthand, boy, you talk about tens of thousands of dollars to come here legally. I mean, it's money that people just don't have. So, that's one of the reasons I'm always fighting for legal immigration, is for that reason. Learn more about the history of past pandemics. Long history of pandemics.
The point.
Appreciate nature and doctors. Great answer. New ways to combat diseases.
The point is...
Yeah, and I'll tell you, she makes a good point. One of the things that Fucci was talking about is we may have to rethink shaking hands. That might be something we just, we decide to rethink. You go to East Asia, they